Hello there and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this series, I share my journey at Microverse as a Microverse student or as a Micronaut. This video is about week 22. This is the second week into the Rails module, which is about controllers and views. These are the tasks and activities we had this week. I'm gonna share my experience and what we learned so far. Enjoy. This week was challenging. We learned about the controllers, the routes and the views, especially the forms. Now we almost visited all of the various concepts into the MVC architecture. So let's consolidate our understanding by revisiting all of them at once. Starting with the browser, it serves as the gateway through which users access our website. When a user enters the appropriate URL, the browser generates a GET request, which is then directed to our server's address along with the corresponding endpoint. This incoming request is intercepted by the router, a vital component responsible for translating and routing requests to their intended destinations. The router receives all types of requests, including post, delete, edit, etc. The router processes the request and forwards it to the relevant controller for further action. The term controller in the context of the MVC architecture is named so because it plays the role of controlling the flow of data and interactions between the model and the view. The name reflects its purpose on managing the logic that connects these two components. Let's start from the models. Models play a crucial role in interacting with the database. Here's what models do in Rails in the context of this model that we created in last week's project. So the first purpose is data representation. Models define the structure of the data in your application. Each model corresponds to a table in the database. Define associations and relationships between entities, aka tables. It has the attributes which represent the columns of a table. It has callbacks which trigger a certain method after a certain action. So for example, after it saves a new item, it will update the counter. It has data validation to enforce data integrity, and it has methods which represent the business logic to implement various behaviors and operations. One important thing to mention here is that the models require an already created database with its schema file. And here comes the important role of the migrations. So migrations are what define our database, and without them our models won't run. This is why the very first step in our blog app we did last week was making these migrations to create our database. Moving on, we have the views, which are the front end of our website. They contain the HTML and CSS that will be sent back to the browser at the end. But these views are written in the HTML.erb format, which allows us to use Ruby to implement logic in our views. Now, the controller will reach out to the database using the models to prepare all of the queries. The queried data is then stored in variables prefixed by @ that are intended for use within the views. And then we'll reach and render the proper view and send it back to the browser. This summarizes the whole MVC architecture that we studied so far. In the blog app project this week, we added the routes, the controllers, and the views, especially the forms. We added the forms into the views. And we are still working in this project for the next week as well. as I mentioned, this week was kind of challenging for me. I did not spend a whole day, like 8, 9 hours in a single project for some time now. But after finishing and looking back, I think all of these concepts were presented and ordered in almost a perfect way. So at the end, it all kind of makes sense together. So yeah, good job, Microverse. Finally, don't forget the like, subscribe, and notifications bell. If you have any questions or feedback, add a comment. Connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Have a beautiful day and happy coding.